The Amazulu Prime Minister Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi is warning against the plot to sell the Ingonyama Trust land to the highest bidder. The prince went on to say that the king is not the owner of the land. Let's discuss the governance squabbles going on within the Zulu royal family now with cultural expert and founder of Ingonyama Trust think tank, Professor Musa Xulu. Prof, thank you so much for making time for us. Where do you think this tension between the king and the traditional prime minister is going to lead to? Do you think it's even possible for them to work together again and trust each other after all of this?
Well, it is possible. Good day, Clement, and your viewers. It is possible for them to come together again, and this has been our call, that they must find it in their two hearts to come together and work out these differences. The differences, of course, are created by points which I think, as Buthelezi has been explaining many times, there is validity in what he says. For example, around the qualifications of Inkosi Mzimela, who is now the chairperson of the trust. That is a problem because, South Africa, as you all know, does have the problem of always liking to give huge positions to people who are not qualified for those positions. Mm-hmm. The second thing, of course, is that the whole issue of land is central to the struggle for liberation ever since the frontier wars in the Cape. In fact, even before the Eastern Cape frontier wars, as well as the battles of Isandlwane and all other battles that were fought to the formation of the ANC in 1912, the issue of land and land ownership, possession by black people in South Africa has always been central to the struggle for liberation. Mm-hmm. And therefore, Buthelezi may be having a valid point in saying that he fears that the way things are happening, a strange board set up, and of course the fact that maybe his much is not saying much, and the rumors about certain business people who seem to be capturing the kingdom establishment, all of those things are really bringing a lot of worry, not only among the members of the royal family, but in this relation per se, because imagine if the last land in the hands of black people were to be taken away, what would happen to the struggle for liberation?
The king has been silent on this. I mean, the last time he addressed the Zulu nation was when he denied that there are tensions between him and the king. What I'm picking up lately is that he's decided to take a backseat and not respond to even the meeting that the prince had with Amakhosi. I mean, these are serious allegations that Prince Buthelezi is bringing forward. He says the land under the Ingonyama Trust doesn't belong to the king. He's also suggesting that the Zulu king, in fact, may be captured. He says there's a plot to sell this land to the highest bidder. These are serious allegations. At some point, the king may be forced to say something.
Well, the allegations are very serious, and in fact, if proven to be true, may actually set back any little gains of the struggle for liberation around the issues of land in KwaZulu-Natal, for example. Now, let me talk about how the land under Ingonyama Trust is structured, and even in terms of the Act itself. Each Inkosi has a ward where they have complete control of the land. And His Majesty the King is actually an Inkosi of Mangosuthu ward in Nongoma. When it comes to the issue of the land, he cannot, for example, go to a Manyatela chief and tell him what to do. That land of the Manyatelas are in the hands of the Manyatelas, completely so. In the beginning, in 1994, the Ingonyama Trust was going to be structured in such a way that each and every chief ward would have complete a trust, would set up their own trust and run completely their affairs. But then the whole thing, they ran out of time for surveying and so on. And so it was agreed that His Majesty would be a trustee. But he's not allowed, for example, to decide on land use at all, except at Mangosuthu Nongoma, where he is a chief.
Mm-hmm. But do you think the traditional prime minister can get the king to change his mind about this appointment of the board chair? He seems to at least have the support of Amakhosi so far.
Well, he has the support of Amakosi. He has the support of the Zulu royal family. You must remember that these things of kingdoms, African kingdoms, including the Zulu kingdom, is always a collective. There is no space for an individual to maneuver as they please. That's why, for example, His Majesty is known as Isilo Samabanda, a king in council. You operate only within those limitations of the views of others, who must talk first and sell their views to you, so that by the time you talk, no one will say no to what you said. So it's complicated. I don't think that the king is going to change the issue of Nkosi Mzimela, and the tension will grow. Unfortunately, it's going to start now going to the ground, as per the anger that you see around Amakosi, as per the anger that you see around members of the community somewhere. I was at a restaurant and I was shocked to hear 6 men who were sitting next to our table discussing this issue very seriously, at a very serious level. I'm saying that when it gets to the ground, if it doesn't get resolved, you know KZN, you know the Zulus, you know sometimes there'll be divisions and people start even fighting, and there'll be some kind of violence that can be expected around this issue.
Why is this trust so important to Prince Buthelezi? He has repeatedly said he created the Ingonyama Trust and seems to be something very close to his heart.
Well, he sees it as his legacy. You will remember that in the months leading up to the 1994 democratic elections, the issue around the land, this Ingonyama Trust land, was very high on the agenda of the Zulu nation, and especially at some other stage, also the IFP. And therefore, he feels that if it is taken away, maybe government decides that it becomes state land once more, or because it is also reputed of having some mineral resources, then you get outsiders coming in here, people seen as outsiders coming in and take the wealth that should belong to the people who live on the land. I think his angle is to say, maybe I worked for this for so much, now it is about to disappear.
Yeah.
And if he communicates with the Makosi, the royal household, and I hear now they're communicating with other structures, what happens is that the perceptions around the issues that he says will begin to crystallize.
Yeah.
And some people may agree with him and others may not.
Yeah. And just lastly, isn't he undermining the king's prerogative, though? Because he can advise the king on what to do, but the king takes the final decision. And I wonder if you think there are serious consequences to the traditional prime minister resigning. How much does the king need him? And in other words, is the king's reign at risk without Prince Buthelezi?
Well, there are those court cases that are still coming up. You remember they started this week and there was a postponement to October. There are angles to the defense in those court cases that need the participation of Buthelezi. You must remember Prince Buthelezi was the one who drove the rise of the king, His Majesty, to the throne under very difficult circumstances. Now, some lawyers are already advising that if he withdraws and doesn't participate anymore, there could be a loophole which may lead to His Majesty being removed.
Well, thank you for making time for us, Professor Musa Xulu, helping us understand these squabbles between the Zulu king and his traditional prime minister and what they mean for the Zulu royal family.